Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a joint meeting of the Glendale City Council, the Glendale Redevelopment Agency, and the Glendale Housing Authority on April 22nd, 2008. Mr. City Clerk, let's call the roll for City Council.
Council members Najarian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver. Here. Yusefian.
Here.
Mayor Draymond.
Here.
For redevelopment.
Agency members Draymond.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Chairman Najarian.
Here.
For housing. Authority members Draymond.
Here.
Mincy.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Barazian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Chairman Yusefian.
Here.
Okay, thank you all very much. Can we have the report, please, Mr. City Clerk?
The agenda for the April 22nd, 2008 joint public meeting of the Glendale City Council, the Glendale Redevelopment Agency, and the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, April 17, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay, thank you. And can we please have the item at number 1?
One is a public hearing, Director of Community Development and Housing, regarding affordable multifamily rental housing project for the United Cerebral Palsy located at 6200 through 6206 San Fernando Road. 1A is a council resolution making certain findings under California redevelopment law, approving the sale of certain property to Glendale Housing Corporation, and making certain findings with respect to such sale. 1B is agency resolution making certain findings under California redevelopment law, approving the sale of certain property to Glendale Housing Corporation and making certain findings with respect to such sale. Now, 1C is authority resolution approving the disposition and development agreement by and between the Housing Authority and Glendale Housing Corporation to the development of the project. Finally, at 1D is agency resolution appropriating $1,439,631 to provide additional funds for the project.
Okay, thank you. Could I just get a little bit of guidance from the city attorney as to which of these items are coupled with which for City Council, for housing, and for redevelopment? I think it will help me, I know, and probably anyone who's listening.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Chair, members of the agency, Mr. Chair, members of the Housing Authority. You have one council resolution that stands alone at 1A, and that's under California redevelopment law. You've got two agency resolutions, B and D, and one is the certain findings under 33433, and the other is D, which is a resolution that just appropriates funds for the project. You have then a Housing Authority resolution which approves the disposition and development agreement at 1C.
Thank you very much.
1B and D can be taken together.
All right. You did say B and D.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Let me, if you don't mind, again, let me ask that we just present this, and then we'll go to the public, and then we'll go to our own comments.
Okay. To Peter Zovak. Peter.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the Housing Authority Agency, and Mayor Draymond, members of the City Council. This item before you, the Housing Authority and Glendale Housing Corporation, which is a limited partnership sponsored by United Cerebral Palsy, Spastic Children's Foundation of Los Angeles and Ventura Counties, have been in discussions regarding the development of a new affordable multifamily rental housing project at 6200 through 6206 San Fernando Road. In support of the project, the Authority previously entered into an option agreement with UCP. The proposed two-story, 24-unit rental project that will be reserved for very low-income, developmentally disabled adults. The purpose of the agreement was to allow the developer to apply for and receive federal and state funding for the project, advance the project through the entitlement process, and negotiate the terms and conditions of a disposition development agreement. To date, United Cerebral Palsy has received awards of funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development under the HUD Section 811 program. The amount of funding they received was $3.1 million. They also applied for and received an award of funding from the state of California under the multifamily housing program for $2.6 million. Then also received federal affordable housing program funds of about $115,000. In addition, the proposed project has completed its zoning entitlement process, having obtained a parking reduction, a variance, environmental design review, and CUP approval, and a disposition development agreement for the sale of the property has been negotiated and presented to the authority for approval. For the terms of the DDA, the authority will provide approximately $4.4 million in redevelopment set-aside and federal home assistance towards the development of the project. These funds will consist of a residual receipt loan from the authority to the developer. The loan will be repaid based upon the annual residual receipts from the project. In addition, the authority will convey fee title to the property to the developer for $1 in order to construct the proposed project. Within that DDA is an option for both the authority and the developer to extend the terms of the affordability for the project beyond the initial 56-year term to an additional 25-year term, and the ability for the authority to purchase back the property and the improvements at that time if that's the decision of the authority. As required by community redevelopment law, a public hearing notice was published, and a summary report and proposed draft agreement have been made available for public review. There is an addendum that we are proposing, and I've provided members of the authority a copy of that addendum. Two areas we would like to change. One is with regards to the disposition development agreement. The other is a proposed change to the home and housing fund note. There are two changes that are being generated by HUD at their request and at their direction, and they have to do with the method in which the disbursement of both Housing Authority and UCP funds will be made towards the project prior to the disbursement of HUD funds. And the second change has to do with a verification of construction costs. Previously it was 90 days after completion. Now it's 90 days after completion or at the time that HUD determines that it needs to be submitted.
Thank you,
Also, I noticed that the agenda states that item 1D is an agency resolution appropriating the $1.4 million. I believe that should be a Housing Authority resolution.
We need clarification on that. Thank you, Mr. Zovac. You did say B, 1B like boy?
1D.
D like David. Or Draymond.
Either one.
All right. We'll get a clarification on that when the city attorney returns.
The resolution does state Housing Authority. The resolution itself, the agenda just is incorrect.
So the agenda item is incorrect then.
Right. So C and D are.
So C and D are housing.
So C and D could be taken together,
They could be
not
taken together.
B and D.
Right. Okay, we'll come back to that confusing proposition in a moment, I'm sure. When we visit item 1C is confusing. Let me open the public hearing and hear from the public, and then we'll move on. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay. Let's start with Ray Drumheiser. We have two cards, Ray Drumheiser and followed by Herbert Milano.
He left.
He left. All right.
In favor of the vote.
Okay. And Herbert Milano is still here, and he's sitting right there, so let's go to Mr. Milano. Artie, 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, members of the City Council, City staff. My name is Herbert Milano. I want to preface my statements with regard to the positive attitude that I have with regard to anything having to do with helping those individuals in need, especially individuals suffering from cerebral palsy. I also want to preface that the statements I'm going to make with regard to Mr. Oliver has no bearing whatsoever with regard to the appreciation I have for his contribution to the city in the past few years. But I think that we have what I think is a particularly significant procedural problem or conflict of interest in this process. In the month of February of this year, February the 5th, the Community Development Block Grant approved the Consolidated Annual Performance Report. And in this report, the Home Investment Partnership Act funding basically is wrapped into that and submitted to the CDBG for approval. Well, the Community Development Block Grant has a member who is Mr. Olivares, the architect. Mr. Olivares is also being the architect of the project that is being funded through partly through the Home Investment Partnership Act, I think raises some issues. It also raises a couple of other issues that are indirectly related to this. 2 years ago, Mr. David Weaver nominated Mr. Olivares to the position of CDBG. And it came to our attention that doing a major improvement of Mr. Weaver's home, it is also Mr. Olivares who is the architect as well. Now, I'm not saying that there is a direct point-to-point correlation with regard to this, but it really raises some issues. Because if Mr. Olivares has a financial benefit from here, and he's also providing services to Mr. Weaver, how can we not assume that there was perhaps, a consideration given to Mr. Weaver in his project? And it is because this is another in the series of similar links between CDBG and HUD money given to entities that eventually have a link to Mr. Weaver. So it is a significant concern to me, and that there's perhaps this clarification could possibly come about if we know that Mr. Olivares did not vote on this particular action items of February the 5th. Nonetheless, because of the appearance of conflict of interest, I think that Councilman Weaver should recuse himself from participating in this decision. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure we're going to get a clarification in a moment, but before we go that, since I have no other cards, let me close the public portion of this. Okay? Now, Mr. City Attorney, we've had an accusation of some very interesting algebra. That's all I can describe it. A plus B equals C, something like that. Would you like to tackle that?
I'm not aware that Mr. Olivares is a source of income for Mr. Weaver, nor that I'm aware that Mr. Weaver has any interests in Mr. Olivares' business, or likewise Mr. Olivares having any interest in any business enterprise that Mr. Weaver has, nor am I aware that Mr. Weaver has received, or his spouse or minor children received gifts in excess of $390 in a 12-month period that would require recusal. I'm not aware of any of those facts which would trigger a possible recusal under the Political Reform Act.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Weaver.
I say the only thing I did is have to pay him for his work.
Okay.
His company made money. I don't think that's illegal. He's an architect and I'm an engineer, so he did the architecture.
All right. I was just going to say, on the topic at hand, do we have any discussion?
Well, no. His other comment had to do with him chairing, or not chairing, but being on the CDBG and whether he voted for the plan or whatever.
Yeah, you were in the back.
I was in the back there. I might need to hear, I don't know if this plan was voted on by...
This was the first part of the algebraic question that I was sort of...
I don't have enough facts to make an assessment
We can give
at
him
this
a
point in
copy.
time.
Minutes.
The annual plan or whatever.
Yeah, that's correct.
He'd share it.
I don't know what
I
they
don't
have.
know,
No, he didn't.
I don't know if Mr. Olivares recused himself on the home portion of the plan. The advisory committee has they are advisory only. The city council has the authority to make the decision. If he did advise the council on the home funds, this project was not part of it. The housing authority has full authority to deal on a project-by-project basis and make funding appropriations.
Okay. Thank you.
So that is the answer. There's no conflict.
Oh, and I have no facts to determine one way or the other. Personally, I just don't have enough information to make a determination one way or the other. Given what I've heard and what I see from the advisory committee agenda, it doesn't tell me enough. It's a receive report regarding submission of consolidated annual performance report. I need a lot more information before we can determine whether or not there was any potential conflict of interest there, and whether or not that then folds over into this issue and creates a potential conflict. I don't have enough facts. I can't determine it.
Let me suggest this. I would like to move on to some debate, if there is any. This issue, if it becomes an issue to pursue, we will pursue it.
We will.
Okay. I believe Councilmember Yusefian had his hand up.
Yes, I would like to move for council on 1A.
Second.
Okay. Let's call the roll.
Wait a minute. Before I vote in the affirmative for all of the motions, let me start with the architect, who I think has done a great job of putting this project together. And for those of you that don't know, including the people from DreamWorks that are here today, this was basically a slum that eventually the city of Glendale had to raise and move the people out. They were basically little motel rooms, sort of a Route 66, but no architectural.
On the next issue. We're on the cerebral palsy.
No.
This is the site.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was
This
getting a lot of
was
eyebrows going up from the
Code
comments,
enforcement
okay.
problem.
This was a code enforcement nightmare that went on for years and years and years. Everyone, and
Mention DreamWorks.
since the DreamWorks people are here, I just wanted to explain. Anyway, it was just a code enforcement nightmare. It was a Route 66 type of motel without any architectural significance. It had to be torn down. And now, thanks to his excellent architectural work, we're going to have a tremendous project that's going to, in fact, upgrade the entire community, as well as obviously serve the purpose of housing members of citizens of Glendale who suffer from cerebral palsy. Just wanted to make that point.
Okay. Did we have any other comments before we vote? Councilor,
And I'm also very much in support of this project. I'm glad that the members of the Pelanconi Homeowners Association have seen fit to drop their objections to this. There were some, I think, exaggerated concerns about the noise, the traffic, the partying that was going to go on at this location. It is a very important part of our entire level of service that we give to those that are less fortunate, that do have severe physical disabilities. It will really improve their quality of life, and at the same time, I think, increase, as Mr. Quintero said, we're turning a seedy motel into a very attractive, well-designed piece of multifamily housing. I guess that's what, technically, it's multifamily. So, thank you.
Do we have any other good? Laura?
And I'm just so happy every time passing by, we see the land just emptied there more than a year, and we are moving on for the needy people. I'm so happy for that.
Thank you. Mr. Mincy?
I'm just, all along, I have supported this because of what it'll do, not only for the community, but for the individuals involved. I only have one. I hadn't seen this picture that's brought up of the property. If it's going to be that purple, I'm sure not for it. I don't think it looks very attractive at all, but I do like the project itself.
The architects.
It's too late, we already voted for it.
Did we? In that colors?
Yes. And you voted for it.
Mr. Mincy, none of us see purple up there. What
is it?
All right.
You need special glasses?
Magenta.
Councilmember Yusefian, do you have any?
I already made a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All right. That being the case, if there's no other comments, let's call the roll, please, on
Did
one.
we get a second?
I believe you
Yes.
did.
Yes.
On 1A,
Yes.
please.
Council members Najarian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Yusefian?
Aye.
Mayor Draymond?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I move 1B.
Second.
1B is an agency.
Mr. Najarian.
Thank
you.
Yes, and
Moved
1B.
and seconded.
thank you. I just wanted to also go to the city attorney again while you're out of the room, Mr. Howard. It was pointed out that items C and D are
Authority.
housing.
Correct. The agenda has it as
Agency.
D as an agency, and it is an authority resolution of appropriation, so C and D can be taken together.
All right.
Is that automatically as amended with the amendment Peter brought in?
We haven't got to that yet. That's C.
Okay.
Don't lead us to any Brown Act violation, Mr. Howard. Okay, I have a motion and a second. If there's no discussion on 1B, roll call, please.
Agency members Draymond?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver? Yusefian?
Aye.
Chairman Najarian?
Yes.
And I move C and D.
There's a motion on C and D as amended, I am assuming?
Yes.
Okay, so
Including
that
the
was the
language-
motion
including the
as
language
is amended with the new
the addendum.
errata and the addendums.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on that. Maybe have a roll call, please, for C and D amended.
Authority members Draymond?
Yes.
Vinci?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Parazian?
Yes.
Quintero?
Yes.
Weaver?
Aye.
Chairman Yusefian?
Aye, motion passes.
Move to adjourn for city council.
Second.
Move to adjourn for the agency.
Second.
The agency is adjourned.
Move to adjourn for the housing.
Second.
And we're adjourned also for the housing.